Yeah? Good.
Hi everyone, welcome to Illustrious Media. My name is Fuxiao, and tonight we're going to talk about my initial reaction to Star Wars the Mandalorian, the new show on Disney Plus, one of the inaugural pieces of content on the Disney Plus streaming service. And let's be honest here, it's pretty much the extremely expensive and season-long advertisements for Disney Plus streaming. So I did get the free membership. I'm not, pirating the show or anything like that. I got the trial membership, and I'm gonna see how it goes. And they have a lot of content on the service, and I might keep it. I might not. I mean, this is really the only thing I'm watching on it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So right out the bat, the show feels a lot more like Star Wars, and it sounds like I'm, all like going all nostalgia, but like take what you will from that. But the overall energy and atmosphere of the show is definitely a lot more closer to what George Lucas did back in the 70s and 80s, and it's just like from everything has a much more lived-in feel, and everything looks kind of very aged and rustic and just grimy and very kind of practical, pragmatic, just by the sets, the design, the costume work. And look, that's not to say that the new movies, the sequel trilogy, if you pick out individual props from the movies, it looks like, yes, obviously, they're done with the best artists, best designers and prop masters and production artists available. But if you put it all together in the way they showed that movie, it seemed, or the way they shot the movies, it feels like they were just trying too hard to make this, like wink nod at the audience. Hey, this is Star Wars. You get it. You remember this. And I mean, it started from the very first ad campaign, the first promotion campaign where they did the whole tour of the set, if you will, with J.J. Abrams in I think it was the Millennium Falcon. It's just like, it was so much of like, trying to really milk the nostalgia and milk the original show, just all the. And the thing is, sure, it got all the props, it got all the design, it had Disney money and all that wonderful stuff, and everything looked good and looked real if you take a freeze frame, but it was trying too hard. It was as if like it wasn't confident in itself as Star Wars. It was really constantly trying to just remind you of the fact that it's Star Wars, which frankly really really took me out the movie in hindsight, or the movies. It's just, like everything had a really like a sheen to it, like a polished sheen, even though it's supposed to look old and rustic. It was really just overdone. Everything was there was just too much fixation on all the visual trappings of Star Wars, and it just lacked the soul and the energy. And this show, from the very first frame, had that in spades. So, there was just that extra layer of just kind of lived-in appeal, and I really appreciated that. So that's the tone right out the bat. That's something that I noticed, and it stuck it through every episode ever since. And yeah, I think they, just right from the get-go on that note, they did a pretty good job. Now, I really like, to talk about the characters next, I really like Pedro Pascal as the titular character, the Mandalorian. And the funny thing was, I had read like months and months ago that he, when the news reports first came out that he was cast in the, in the role, I was like, oh, cool, yeah, sure. I liked him well enough in everything else he's been in. But then I've completely forgot about him. I've completely forgot about who was in the role. And all I got when I first started watching the show for the first 2 or 3 episodes was the mask. And I love the fact that I forgot about him, because for a while that I was sitting around trying to decipher the voice. It sounded so familiar, but, I just couldn't put a face to it. And the funny thing was that, and I think I definitely got a more of an extra hit of this because I forgot about, Pedro Pascal, is that the voice sounded a lot like Clint Eastwood back in the spaghetti westerns back in the Man with No Name movies. And as you can see, I'm a big fan of those things. I mean, look behind me. Like props to you if you can recognize the poster. And just that kind of cold, dry, well, not cold, but really dry and just kind of steady, calm, mostly neutral voice tone, but it delivered somehow. And so like it really worked, because obviously they were milking the whole Western kind of like aesthetic and Western atmosphere and just kind of storytelling style. And so having that voice that really just threw an image in my head of like the Man with No Name certainly did not hurt at all. I mean, for a brief second there, and I know this wasn't the case, but for a brief second I thought, oh my God, it would have been cool to have like Clint Eastwood's kid, Scott Eastwood, the one that's been in some of the in the Fast and Furious movies recently, for him to be in that suit and just have that voice. But I know that wasn't the case from the get-go, because his voice doesn't really sound like that. But yeah, like he really had and I was like I was concerned when when the premise was like, okay, this person would pretty much never come out of the mask. And I had it's just like, okay, the dramatic the dramatic limitations of that. But then like all that was completely completely assuaged, if you will, when the first episode dropped and I watched it. And it's like, oh, okay. And what I noticed was that there's several things happening here with this character that that actually was elevated by the fact that he's in that suit. And one of them is that you really, as the audience, you really have to pay closer attention to the voice work, the intonation, and also the actions of the character and the body language and the and I mean, that's really key. Otherwise, you're gonna be and I think what it does, that limitation, creative limitation, forced some innovation on part of the actors and the writers and storytellers, because again, it's all about the body language, the action, the movements, and Pedro Pascal delivers like in space in terms of keeping his character very pragmatic, very economical. Not a real wasted moment. I mean, like everything you see him doing on screen, he's not really lounging around or doing anything extra. He's like, whatever action he's doing is necessity at that point. And I think another reason why this worked so well for me was because again, back to the whole creative limitation, force driving innovation storytelling here theme, is that it really pushed the writers and storytellers to build up a consistent character, like consistency in storytelling and character building, because again, you're not seeing the facial expressions, so that's one thing you lost. But now, to make up for it, then everything else has to be elevated. So it's not just what the character is saying, but also like what the character does throughout the course of the show, and that consistency, that logic. And it's really interesting, like I just noticed that how like I'm enjoying this show, because it's fun to see them having to tell the story, or rather lean more heavy on this part of storytelling. And as you know, like this channel is definitely going to be quite a bit about storytelling, because I'm a writer and a creative. So yeah, I'm really fascinated by this. The other thing the show so far has given me is some hope and some excitement for the Master Chief series, the Halo series coming to Showtime. And it's the similar situation. It's a character that's in a suit and behind a helmet, very dry, sense of humor when he has one, but that's always been the concern with that Halo show, if you've been following some of the news reports. And this concern is not unfounded, because the creators of the game, Bungie, did say that they had designed the Master Chief to be kind of an empty shell, an empty vessel for the player to inhabit, to play out the hero fantasy and all that stuff. So really, the character was not designed to be, enjoyed, or rather be be expressed in like a narrative or a traditional TV show or movie narrative fashion. However, the similarities or the potential similarities between The Mandalorian and the Master Chief series gives me a lot of hope for that series. I think if they cast the actor right, and they take some lessons to be learned from this series, and they apply it, and they can do a good job with the writing and the consistent character building over the course of the show, I think it would be, I don't think that would be much of an issue. So yeah, and that's on the character part. Some other notes: I love the details of the world, and I think I touched on that, and also the contained arcs and the characters. And I love the fact that how I can recall the characters necessarily without their names. That was really interesting and fun. And it's just like you get to see some of the more explore. Like the show really gives you a high budget kind of zoomed in feel of like Star Wars, like the lesser factions and parties. I love the episode. I think episode 2 with the Javas and Jawas. And so I won't talk more about that. I'm gonna, there is a spoiler section ahead, so I'll warn you. But and I love the just like the spacecraft. And it's just a lot of fun to see these things in action and that kind of detail you get. What else? Obviously, in terms of production, the high budget is very apparent. I mean, it's splashed over the screen at every shot. It's very, they parked the money truck, in front of the production studios and just let her rip, So, which it makes sense given that this was pretty much an advertisement for the streaming service, and Disney is a monster with money. So, love the costumes, and so there's going to be a bit of spoilers here. I love the armor pieces, and that. Then why don't you just go right to spoiler reason, because I'm kind of done with my initial notes. So, spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen the show yet, you plan on, or you care about this kind of thing, definitely tune back, for other videos. But so you've been warned. Spoiler time. So back where we left off just now, the costumes. So the armor pieces on the Mandalorian on the Mandalorian's armor. I love the attention to detail, not just in design, but they really, they make a theme of it. They make a theme of the character building, and they use like the in one of the episodes, or a couple of the episodes, they use I think episode 1 and 3, when he gets the armor getting like from that piece of was it Beskar or something like that metal, that ingot that the Imperial officer or whoever he was, Werner Herzog's character, gives him, and it just shows you it basically puts some time and energy into showcasing the value of that piece of equipment, of that material, of that ingot, and then how it can be used. And it's pretty much I guess it's just like a laser proof, body armor thing. So and they use the forging process to give you flashbacks of the Mandalorian's like childhood, which it's a little tropish, but it works. It's effective. I think there's going to be a theme down the line where there's going to be certain, I guess, as he's upgrading piece of equipment, and you're going to see that like it's like almost as if the character is the armor and the armor is the character, and it's really smart. It's like where the pieces of the armor are like kind of like forged, and his humanity essentially from when he was adopted by the Mandalorians has been taken out of him and applied into the armor, and then when the forging process happens, you get to see the flashbacks. So I love that. I like that theme a lot. And I'm excited to see what happens as they explore that further. So, then obviously there's the thing that everybody's talking about, the Baby Yoda. I love the interaction between Baby Yoda character and the Mandalorian. It is not overtly sweet. It is not overtly, like silly, and because that's what I was actually afraid of when the character first showed up. I think there's definitely like a very deft hand they're playing in terms of subtlety and nuance in delivery of the characterization and the acting and and just overall like the development. Which frankly lacked sorely, severely lacked in the sequel trilogy, in the new movies. I mean, oh my God, forget, like, look, I'm not going to go into the politics of whatever, that Tauntaun has been beaten to death and then resurrected and beaten to death some more, and then dissected and disemboweled by a lightsaber and then beaten to death some more, okay? So we don't need to talk about that, but what I'll say is that new sequel trilogy, they don't have any subtlety, I mean, it's just like, how the Jedi has a saying, the lightsabers for more weapons from more civilized age, and this elegance to using the lightsaber. Well, the sequel trilogy, frankly, took a Death Star ray to that notion. That's all I say about that. So we're on sorry about that tangent. Anyways, so I like this whole like kind of more of a nuanced expression of character is pretty consistent so far into episode 4. I like how they humanize the Empire a bit too in the first episode with Werner Herzog's character, and just they finally giving you some like just people who act like human beings, and again there's subtlety, there's just an extra layer of complexity and nuance that's just not in the movies. It's something I'm excited to see more of. And I feel like, part of my reason for being excited about this show is because, we've been sorely lacking good Star Wars content in some time. I mean, live action wise. I did watch some of the animated series, but this is, to me, something quite special. And the final note I have is, with another bit of spoiler, is I love how the show highlights some of the less glamorous and more kind of mundane and just tedious aspects of being a Mandalorian and being a bounty hunter. Just the process, the preparation, him going through his daily routine like a well-oiled machine, and and prepping his ship, and just the practicalities of getting things to work and to just. Yeah, it's not glamorous, not always that fun. I love the episode with the Jawas. I mean, I love the show's ability now to essentially tell independent stories, throughout the season. I like that. It gives them an opportunity to explore a lot of new stuff, and it's like kind of Firefly-esque, if you will. And I like the show. I like the series about the Jawas because it really gives you that extra kind of bit of just insight into these little creatures with their sandcrawler, and I'm just wondering is like I'm not sure, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I'm not sure if they ever highlighted the name of the planet in the first episode. Was that Tatooine, or like are there sandcrawlers on like most planets with deserts in the outer rim or something? Is that how it works? I'm not that well versed in the extended universe, and I haven't checked up on the wikis. But I love the up close and personal view we got on the sandcrawler, and those things can actually haul ass, when they come down to it. And it's just a fun episode. I think that is, episode 2 is probably my favorite episode so far, with the Jawas just going crazy, and and they forcing him to to have to play by their rules to get what he needs. I mean, it's such a great character because you think, oh, he's such a badass, he's probably going to do something like blow up the entire sandcrawler. But no, he's a very pragmatic, practical character, and he'll do what it takes to get the job done. And and he's not going to snub his nose at dirty jobs like getting like a yeah, getting the Jawas their omelet, you know, like they're like the omelet they've been looking forward to for all this time. So that's the overall notes I have so far. I don't want to get into the weeds too much with the individual episodes because, you know, that's just too long of a video. But yeah, please tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Are you enjoying the show? Do you think that, you know, or do you think this is just, you know, inferior compared to what you had in mind? Please let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and definitely comment. We're building this channel, so if you're here for the first time, thank you very much for joining me. Again, my name is Fuxiao, and this is Illustrious Media signing off. Have a good night.